What if I told you some of the most successful people in entertainment, people you've laughed at for decades, score high on personality traits psychologists associate with manipulation, emotional coldness, and a complete inability to say the words, my bad, right? Not villains, not serial killers, not, Hannibal Lecter sipping Chianti, just incredibly talented people who can make an entire audience laugh, while everyone around them quietly considers homicide, right? Now that's uncomfortable because we like to believe talent and being a decent human being come as a package deal, right? But psychology suggests something a little bit messier than that, okay? There's a personality cluster that researchers call the Dark Triad. Today we're going to break down what the Dark Triad actually is, and then we're going to look at one of the most famous comedians in Hollywood history as a case study in what happens when talent, ego, and emotional blind spots all collide, okay? Not to diagnose anyone, okay, but just to understand a pattern. Okay, now what is the Dark Triad? We'll start with the big idea here. Psychologists have noticed something interesting. There are certain personality traits that tend to travel together like a bad buddy comedy, right? These traits were eventually grouped into something called the Dark Triad. 3 ingredients: narcissism. This one most people recognize, right? Narcissists tend to believe they are smarter, more talented, more important, and generally the most fascinating thing in any room, right? On the positive side, they have confidence, charisma, and ambition. On the downside, they react to criticism the way, a raccoon reacts to a flashlight, right? It's pure chaos. Second, you have psychopathic traits. And no, this doesn't mean axe murderer, all right? In everyday personality research, it usually means people that have lower empathy, less guilt, and high fearlessness, and a certain level of emotional detachment, okay? Now, some people feel emotions very intensely. Others kind of don't. Imagine emotional colorblindness, right? You understand emotions exist, you just don't feel them the same way, okay? That's psychopathy. Third, Machiavellianism, named after Niccolo Machiavelli, right, the patron saint of political scheming. These people think strategically about relationships. They're very good at reading rooms, they're good at manipulation, and very comfortable playing the long game. If you put those 3 traits together, you get someone who can be charming, fearless, persuasive, ambitious, all of those things, which coincidentally are traits that do extremely well in entertainment. And that brings us to today's case study, Chevy Chase. Let's talk about Chevy Chase. Again, this is not a diagnosis. We're just looking at documented behavior patterns over a very long career, okay? And Chevy Chase has one of the strangest reputations in comedy because almost everyone agrees on 2 things. First, he's incredibly funny, and he is incredibly funny. If you need to double check me on this, go watch Fletch again. Or if you haven't watched it, why are you watching it? Go watch Fletch and laugh your ass off. Second, in addition to him being incredibly funny, he's incredibly difficult. And that pattern starts very early. He became the breakout star of Saturday Night Live during its very first season. And he was the one that started to deliver the famous opening line, "Live from New York, it's Saturday night." That was him. He was the face of the show. The problem was success hit very quickly, and by most accounts, humility did not make the trip with him. And when Chevy returned to host the show a couple years later, the backstage vibe was, let's just say, tense. Very tense. In fact, so tense that Bill Murray reportedly confronted him. The argument escalated, and depending on whose story you believe, it turned into a physical altercation backstage. I mean, they were throwing punches.
Musical guest on Saturday Night Live when Chevy Chase and Bill Murray got into a fight.
Yes.
Like a physical fist fight.
Yeah, we were there.
Did you see that go down?
Oh, yeah, we were standing with them when
Wait
it
a
happened.
second. I got to hear this story. This is the best.
We were backstage. They were having some kind of meeting backstage before the show starts. And all of a sudden,
Bill Murray
gets into a fight with Chevy Chase. Chevy was kind of being overbearing. And everybody was pissed off at Chevy. And Jane Curtin's walking around, God damn it, fuck him.
Which is not the typical outcome when coworkers reunite. I mean, if Bill Murray punches you, you may want to consider some form of light introspection, okay? But here's where it gets interesting. One awkward conflict doesn't mean much, okay? Everybody has bad days. But over the next 40 years, similar stories kept popping up. Movie sets, television sets, interviews, profiles, co-workers describing him as brilliant but difficult, very funny but hard to work with, talented but, okay, that phrase, talented but, okay, is doing a lot of the work. I mean, a couple other quick examples here. He had a run-in with Richard Pryor on his first year on SNL. He also worked with Goldie Hawn on the film Foul Play. And in interviews, Goldie Hawn describes him as, quote, a complicated person, which in Hollywood speak, that's diplomatic code for that was not a relaxing work environment, okay? In 2002, Comedy Central hosted a roast for Chevy Chase. Several comedians used the opportunity to vent real frustration, and the tone shifted from playful jokes to something closer to group therapy, I guess, right? In fact, one comic even joked, the one thing here everyone has in common is they've all worked with Chevy Chase, and none of them want to again. Roasts usually celebrate someone's career. I mean, but this one felt more like a reunion of people who had survived working with him, right? Now, fast forward several decades to the sitcom Community. Once again, Chevy Chase is funny. Once again, conflict shows up. He clashes with the show's creator, Dan Harmon. At one point, Harmon even played a voicemail of Chase, who criticized the show during a panel.
I hope you're ready to take your medicine, you fat and your writing is getting worse and worse, so suck my I got nothing to say to you except you can suck my Is that clear? And I hope you can play that for everybody around you who agrees with you.
Okay? Now, that's not exactly workplace harmony. Okay, there were also reports of insensitive remarks and tension with cast members, including Donald Glover. And again, the interesting part isn't the conflict. The interesting part is the consistency. Different decade, different co-workers, same basic story. Okay? A recent Netflix documentary revisits his career and his reputation.
I'm just trying to figure you out.
No. It's not going to be easy for you.
Why is it not going to be easy?
You're not bright enough. How's that?
And the tone is fascinating. People, everyone, admires his comedic talent. But there's also this quiet acknowledgement that relationships kept breaking down. And in interviews, Chevy sometimes appears almost detached when discussing those conflicts. Not angry, not apologetic, just distant, which is a pattern researchers often notice in people who score higher on certain Dark Triad traits. Now, the part that people get wrong is these Dark Triad traits don't automatically mean that someone is evil or they're malicious. It just means they're wired differently, that's all. Some people feel guilt strongly, others barely register it. Some people obsess over whether they hurt someone's feelings. Others think, so what? That difference can create incredible talent in competitive environments, but it can also create a long trail of burned bridges. Both of those can be true at the same time. So, what I really want to get to, the whole point of this is to get to the real question, which is, who are the Chevy Chases in your life? Think about it. We all know someone who is extremely talented, extremely confident, and hard to deal with. Maybe it's a boss, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's someone who can charm a room in 10 seconds and then create chaos 5 minutes later. The key thing to understand is, don't diagnose people. Just watch for patterns, okay? And there's a couple patterns to look for real quick. Pattern one is the criticism explosion. If you give them even mild feedback, watch what happens. A healthy personality will say, okay, yeah, maybe I could have handled that better. But a high Dark Triad personality would say, what are you talking about? This is all your fault. Pattern two, the charm switch. They can be incredibly charming when they want something, but once they have it, That warmth disappears, right? That's strategic charm.
You betrayed me. No, I didn't. Honest. I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaners. An old friend came in from out of town. Someone stole my car. There was an earthquake. A terrible flood. Locust. It wasn't my fault, I swear to God!
Oh, Jake.
Let's go.
Pattern 3 is the boundary test. Try setting a simple boundary. A healthy person will say, okay, all right, understood, got it. A dark triad personality will push that boundary. They'll test it. They'll push again. Boundaries are like a game to them.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow. So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay?
Okay, so just watch for those things. Now, we come to the practical question. Let's say you've identified someone in your life who fits this pattern. Now, maybe not a Hollywood comedian, but someone who is very confident, charming, and allergic to criticism, but always leaves emotional wreckage behind them somehow. What do? Most people handle these personalities in exactly the wrong way. They assume the other person operates on the same emotional system they do. That causes the problem, okay? That assumption causes, just a lot of unnecessary frustration. So here's a couple of quick rules for dealing with the Chevy Chases in your life. Number 1, stop expecting emotional reciprocity. This is the biggest mistake people make. They try to appeal to empathy. They say things like, I just want you to understand how that made me feel. Now, for a healthy, emotionally attuned person, that works great. But for someone who's high in dark triad traits, that conversation is basically white noise. It's like trying to explain color again, to someone who's colorblind. They might understand the words, but the emotional experience behind those words simply isn't there. So instead of saying, please care about my feelings, you need to shift the conversation to outcomes. Say, look, this doesn't work for me. Short, clear, done. Rule 2, don't overshare personal information. These personalities are very good at reading people, and they notice insecurity and they notice vulnerability, and they will use that information strategically. So if you find yourself around a dark triad person, resist the urge to emotionally unload. You don't need to tell them your deepest fears. You don't need to explain every insecurity you have. Think of your personal information like classified documents. Share selectively. Rule 3, structure beats emotion. When dealing with high conflict personalities, ambiguity is dangerous because that gives them room to maneuver. So instead of vague agreements like, yeah, we'll figure something out, you want clarity. Clear expectations, clear timelines, clear responsibilities. In the workplace, this means putting things in writing. Remember, emails are your friend, documentation is your friend. Because when expectations are clear, manipulation becomes much harder. Finally, don't try to win the personality battle. A lot of people fall into this trap. They think, well, if I just explain things clearly enough, if I just make the right argument, if I just get them to see my perspective, then everything will change. But if someone fundamentally prioritizes status, leverage, or advantage, then you're not going to talk them into being a different personality type. Okay, so just remember, the goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to manage the interaction. Okay, let's bring it back home to the end, I guess, right? Remember what we said earlier. The dark triad personality types, it doesn't mean that that person's evil. These traits can produce incredible ambition and creativity, and it can fuel amazing careers, but it can also make relationships hard. So when you encounter someone who fits this pattern, don't diagnose them, don't try to change them. Just understand the personality structure you're dealing with, because once you understand the pattern, you stop taking it personally, and you start interacting strategically. All right. Whew, that was a lot of information. But now you're ready to handle the Chevy Chases in your life. So now go and do likewise. And if you'd like to be notified when I post new content, then subscribe and hit that bell. I'll see you next time.